family reunion takes a twisted turn,
What the devil happened to you up there?
turning brothers into bitter rivals.
Hey, it's Jean-luc, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Now, I spent a lot of time on Treknalysis talking about the odder episodes of Star Trek. You know, those mid or even straight up bad episodes, delighting in the follies of those episodes. Which, to be fair, has its own rewards. But today, I'm going to treat myself. I want to talk about one of my favorite episodes in all of Trek. I deserve it.
You were asking for it, you know.
Many Trekkies consider the two-parter The Best of Both Worlds to be the best episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. And to be fair, it's a pretty good two-parter. But I would still have to respectfully disagree. The best episode is the following episode that serves as an epilogue, simply titled Family.
When you're here, you're family.
I don't have friends. I got family.
It's a great character episode filled with heartwarming moments, as well as tackling the consequences of the previous two episodes. A bit of a rarity in TNG. Heck, this episode is so good that even the Wesley plot is watchable. I mean, that's something special. Settle in, kids. Today, it's all about family.
I even enjoyed bullying you. Damn you!
A tragic homecoming on Star Trek.
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. Alright, so a discussion about family requires some background for the Best of Both Worlds. Which I probably should have covered before family, but you know what? I'm talking about family first because I want to. And yes, technically you all should have watched the Best of Both Worlds before clicking into this video, so this is just a recap and not an excuse to skip the Best of Both Worlds. So here's the short version of the Best of Both Worlds.
Here we go, the short version.
The Borg attempted to invade Federation space and assimilate Earth, just because they felt like it. But of course, the Federation isn't ready for them. The Federation encounters the Borg, who beam on board, capture Picard, and leave. Picard is taken on board the Borg cube, determined to resist them with his last ounce of strength.
And I will resist you with my last ounce of strength.
Unfortunately, Picard is assimilated anyways as the Borg's mouthpiece. I mean, can you blame them? The accent, the smooth tones?
Oh, yes.
He's also renamed Locutus of Borg, not the cutest of Borg as it might initially sound. And Riker orders Worf to fire, and we have perhaps the longest summer in Star Trek history. And it turns out it was all for naught, and the cutest of Borg and his new Borg buddies escape, where they go on to wreck Federation fleets over the next 6 days. Including at Wolf 359, where one Commander Sisko lost his wife, which led to his hatred of Picard at the start of DS9.
I was on the Saratoga at Wolf 359.
The entire time, Picard himself is conscious of everything happening. What's being done to him, what the Borg are making him do, and the battles he's forced to fight in. And he has no control over any of it. Picard is finally recaptured, helps Data hack into the Borg cube to make them go to sleep, is unassimilated, Riker loses the captaincy but regains all his holodeck time, and though Picard has returned to his usual tea-drinking self, it's clear he's on the long road to recovery. Alright, you're all caught up now. Now on with family. The Enterprise is being refit and overhauled at Earth after the Borg incident. They deserve it. Worf is hard at work testing out the new weapon systems and approving shore leave and personnel transfers. Because if that incident with the Borg taught anyone on board anything, it's that whatever doesn't kill you earns you some vacation time, or a transfer to one of those quiet Amazon Prime cargo ships.
By the way, I'm looking forward to meeting your parents.
Sir?
Uh-oh, an unexpected visit from Mom and Dad. Worf's parents invited themselves on board, but neglected to tell Worf about it. Which he's not exactly thrilled about.
You didn't know?
Heck, you'd think they'd cause him just about as much dishonor as his discommendation less than a year ago. Which I have a video about. He had informed his parents about his discommendation, but they just won't understand.
I do not believe any human can truly understand my dishonor.
Meanwhile, Picard's getting ready to visit his older brother and his family in Le Bar, France, while Troy gives him the 3rd degree.
Where have you decided to go?
My home village.
Really?
It's home. Do I need another reason?
I don't know. What do you think?
You're the empath. Why don't you tell me?
Now, to be fair, it is a little odd that Picard is taking a vacation. After all, Deanna had to threaten to bring her mother on board in order for him to go to Risa. Which says more about her than it does about Jean-Luc. Deanna, your mother's a treasure!
Jean-Luc! You delicious man. You were just thinking of me, weren't you?
Picard insists that the only reason he's going to Le Bar is because it's home, and he's completely fine after his incident with the Borg.
I'm better.
The pose in the next Men of Starfleet calendar. Troy, as usual, proves to be of little help, stating that it'll take time for him to recover. Again, no shit, Deanna, the Borg drilled into his brain!
Interesting.
Deanna kisses Picard goodbye. Girl, he's your boss. And I like this little detail before the opening credits roll. As Picard is about to leave, he grabs some books, thinks about it, and puts them back, as well as take a final look around the room. It's a subtle form of foreshadowing. He's not entirely sure he's coming back. It's a lot packed into a couple of seconds of screen time, and I dig it.
My mother is never on time.
Well, you know women.
Women, am I right? Worf complains about his parents to Miles, the hero of Setlick 3 O'Brien, who decides to top Worf by telling him about the time his father chased a nurse around a biobed in sickbay. Wait, Riker's Chief O'Brien's father?
But it's always something with parents, isn't it?
Now, we only got a passing reference to Worf's parents back in Season 1, so we don't know a whole bunch about them.
A human Starfleet officer found me. He took me to his home on Galt and told his wife to raise me as his son.
So this is the first glimpse we're getting of the people who raised Worf.
Worf.
You look good, son.
Oh my gosh, they're adorable and I love them! Even though Worf was adopted, in case the Klingon forehead ridges weren't enough of a clue, they clearly treat him like their own flesh and blood, and they take a legitimate interest in Worf. The way Helena looks at Worf, there's so much love and pride for her son in just a look. And Sergei, he speaks with such pride in his son.
Can you imagine an old enlisted man like me raising a boy to be an officer?
It's a joy to watch. Also, Sergei totally fanboying over the Enterprise and making friends with O'Brien.
Miles Edward O'Brien, sir. Good to meet you.
Don't call me sir. I used to work for a living.
At home, I have all the specs and diagrams of the Galaxy-class starships.
Worf, how can you be embarrassed by your parents? You and Deanna, I swear. Meanwhile, Picard's getting mugged back home.
Good lord. A highwayman.
Le Bar just isn't the same place it was when you left us, Jean-Luc. In fact, this town has gotten so rough that Picard's getting mugged by his own uncle.
You're my nephew, Jean-Luc, from the Starship Enterprise.
Then you must be my Uncle Rene.
Okay, in reality, this is Picard's nephew, Rene. And despite the fact that they're family, Picard is still keeping a respectable distance because Rene's a kid.
So I would appreciate it if you could keep me from making an ass of myself with children.
But despite that, Picard's already starting up a rapport with him, even though his own brother was clearly talking shit about him.
What does it mean anyway? Arrogant son of a...
Let's talk about that later, shall we?
Even his sister-in-law Marie welcomes Jean-Luc with open arms. And you can tell Picard is even more distant than usual. Sure, he's normally distant with everyone, but this feels different. There's pain and uncertainty in his voice, and he even lacks the confidence he usually has. He waxes on about the past and how the Picard estate hasn't changed much. And he takes on a nostalgic sadness.
The house, hills, every tree, every bush seems untouched by the passage of time.
We're getting a rawer Picard here. He may put on a brave face for his crew like he did with Troy, but here it's clear, though subtle, he's having a tough time.
Someday I'm going to be a starship captain.
Yeah.
Robert and Rene, they're burned to death in the fire.
Now, if you're wondering who Picard's brother is, it's the man with the receding hairline eating grapes in a field. Oh, don't let the hat fool you. Picard greets his brother, Robert, and Yeah, they don't exactly have the warmest greeting. Heck, Robert doesn't even bother to stand up. Just head on over to the house and make yourself at home. I got a vine to cure. Also, check how well the video and matte painting blend together so well. See, not everything needs to be CGI. Meanwhile, on a tour of engineering, even with all the
Specs and diagrams of the Galaxy-class starships.
Sergei is regaling Geordi with stories of one 7-year-old Worf beating up 5 teenage boys. Like, dang! This is the same guy that gets owned by Ferengi? And barrels?
Wanted to tell him the story about...
Enough stories, Sergei.
Okay.
How could you not love them? Helena wants to check out the Arboretum, so her and Worf depart for Keiko country, while Sergei stays behind with Geordi in engineering.
If you have a couple of minutes, there's something else I want to ask you. It's about my son.
And this is what I mean. You can tell Sergei and Helena care about Worf. Both of them have so much love and care for their son that it's impossible to not love them. Why didn't we see more of them on the show? Meanwhile, at the Picard estate, dinner is served. A non-replicated dinner, mind you. And this scene highlights how different the Picard brothers are. While Jean-Luc looks to the future and explores the galaxy, Robert stays at home and maintains the traditions of their family. They're even arguing over wine versus synthahol.
You've been drinking too much of that artificial stuff.
I think that synthahol heightens one's appreciation for the genuine article.
Robert resists the advancement of technology. Heck, a lot of their traditions are slowly fading away because of it.
Cooking is becoming a lost art. That's your wretched technology again.
Robert, let me introduce you to Ben Sisko.
You don't like beets, Doctor?
Jean-Luc, however, maintains that you don't have to lose any traditions just because you add a new convenience to life, which is very much in line with his character. Even though Jean-Luc is off exploring the galaxy, advancing into the future, he has a connection to the past. He loves archaeology. He has an interest in Shakespeare. He even encourages Wesley to study the classics because that's where all the meaning is.
Open your mind to the past, and all this may mean something.
But that's not what Robert sees. To him, Jean-Luc is throwing away their traditions and even represents everything he's fighting against. Which is all the more concerning when Renee takes an interest in Uncle Jean-Luc.
I wrote a report on starships for school.
I once wrote a report on starships when I was about your age.
Robert is trying to protect Renee from everything out there, and oh my gosh, the irony of that statement just hit me with what eventually happens to both Robert and Renee at their home. Star Trek Generations, why?
You raise your own sons as you would wish.
Who told you about Wesley?
Might have made a good father.
You always reach for the future, and your brother for the past.
There should be room for both in this life.
The Picard bros in a nutshell. Picard meets up with an old chum of his, Louis, and yeah, they go back and forth on the French and English pronunciations. Robert isn't Robert, except for one slip-up later in the episode, and Louis isn't Louis. Louis is working on the Atlantis project to raise the ocean floor to create a new subcontinent. Picard's been following the Atlantis project, and Louis remarks that his team is looking for someone exactly like him.
But I know, you'd never leave Starfleet.
No, I'd never leave Starfleet.
Uh-oh, there's that uncertainty again. Heck, Picard's even considering joining Louis and agrees to a meeting with the project leads, with a concerned brother listening in. Meanwhile, in 10 Forward, Worf's sharing a cold one with his parents, and also tells them they're not being reserved enough. You take that back, mister! Your parents are wonderful people!
We go too far sometimes.
We're just excited to be here.
As they should be, Worf! Worf's called away, and a wave of helplessness rushes over Sergei and Helena.
Maybe we should just leave it alone.
I can't just leave it alone. I'm his mother.
And just then, the best person to talk to shows up. No! Guinan!
How come you never gave him prune juice?
He was always regular. Look at Sergei's face! That is the most what-the-hell face I've ever seen in my life. Sergei and Helena are very humble about how they raised Worf. Worf's childhood wasn't the easiest, and he had to discover his own heritage without other Klingons, but they both supported and loved him.
I learned to cook rocket blood pie.
However, we never quite learned how to eat it.
But unfortunately, they both feel that Worf thinks they don't understand him. But Guinan tells them while part of him might feel that way, she sees another part of him, the part that looks out towards home.
He's not looking towards the Klingon Empire. He's looking towards you.
See, this is what DS9 gets wrong about Worf. Don't get me wrong, I love DS9, it's my top Star Trek show. But it ignores the fact that Worf was brought up among humans and even worked with them for years. Instead, he's constantly charging towards the Klingon Empire, which wants little to do with him for being in Starfleet. It kinda cheapens the character on DS9, where on Next Gen, he's torn between two worlds, his upbringing and his heritage. He shouldn't be isolated on the Defiant, he should be in regular quarters, picking his beard in that weird chair he has. Helena and Sergei stop by for a little heart-to-heart with Worf. While he admits he wasn't sure he wanted them to come, he's glad that they're here now.
We had to come.
Our boy was in trouble.
The big reason Sergei and Helena came to the Enterprise was because they were concerned about Worf after his discommendation, even though they didn't completely understand it all. Worf insists that he must bear his dishonor alone, but Sergei and Helena assure him that that's not true, and that they're with him, and they're proud of him and love him.
You are our son.
Meanwhile, Picard's been hitting the non-synthesized sauce when Robert walks in to, in layman's terms, poke the bull about his time with the Borg.
Now there is something I'd like to see. The gallant captain out of control.
Heck, Picard removes himself from the conversation, and Robert follows to further antagonize him. Like, geez, Robert, chill! And he's really needling Picard over everything. He turned on a parade in his honor. He's the big hero.
I'm a hero. Of course you are.
Oh, he's tired of fighting? Like he's tired of the Enterprise? Why'd you come back home, Jean-Luc? So Robert can look after you?
Damn you!
I don't want to fight you, Flash.
I wouldn't want to fight me neither.
Oh, the mud! Their clothes are so dirty.
You have been terribly hard on yourself.
We start the scene with Robert mercilessly antagonizing Picard, hitting closer and closer to home. But he did all of that because Picard needed that emotional release. He was willing to take a punch and get thrown into the mud to make his brother feel better. If you thought Robert was a massive jerk before, you kinda understand why he said everything he did.
You don't know. They took everything I was.
This is where Picard finally breaks down and acknowledges what happened to him. Something that Deanna wasn't capable of doing. Honestly, I'd let this entire scene play out because it's brilliantly acted by both Patrick Stewart and Jeremy Kemp. But I'll have to be satisfied with clips and summary. Picard finally breaks down crying with all his guilt pouring out, everything he's been keeping bottled up inside. Not only did the Borg force him to fight against the Federation, he couldn't stop any of it.
And I will resist you with my last ounce of strength.
I wasn't strong enough. I wasn't good enough. I should have been able to stop.
This is Picard's shame. He was too weak to resist the Borg, and it led to thousands of deaths. No wonder he doesn't want to be called a hero. He doesn't feel he deserves it.
My brother is a human being after all.
Robert tells Jean-Luc he's going to have to learn to live with all of this, but he has to decide where he's going to do it. Below the sea with Lewis, or in the clouds with the Enterprise. Yep, a fistfight in the mud did more for Jean-Luc's well-being than all the therapy Troy could muster.
Interesting.
I still don't like you, Jean-Luc.
A few moments later.
Oh, hell no! All over the furniture? Honestly, Murray's being far too restrained here. Who's going to clean it up? After all, Robert probably doesn't have one of those self-cleaning floors. After a good mud fight and copious amounts of wine, Jean-Luc has come to a decision. He's got another 4 seasons and 4 movies to cover, so he's going back to the Enterprise. Now, I did mention a Wesley plot earlier, but it's a pretty small plot, so I'll just summarize it here. Beverly went through a box belonging to her husband and Wes's theoretical father, Jack, and found a message he recorded for Wes when he was a baby. She hesitated giving it to Wes, who had just come to terms with his father's death, but ultimately gives it to him to watch.
Do you know what it says? Dinna light that candle.
And the message? Full of double meanings.
You see, this Jack Crusher won't exist by the time you're all grown up. This person will be gone.
Jeez, writers, chill out! No, this is actually a pretty sweet moment, and the episode is so good that even the Wesley plot is decent. Jack talks about his hopes for Wes, how much Starfleet means to him, and how it's the reason he's been gone so much. And he's probably going to make a lot of mistakes as Wesley grows up, but he loves him.
I can see in your face all the people I've loved in my lifetime.
Especially Jean-Luc for some reason. But it's time for the episode to wrap up. Worf's parents are heading back to Earth, and Jean-Luc says his farewells to his family.
Someday, I'll be leaving for my starship too.
Not if Patrick Stewart has anything to say about it. Look it up, that plot point was his idea. Robert and Jean-Luc also bid farewell to each other. They've had their differences, but after this, they're closer than ever, and they hug it out.
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
And I love Jeremy Kemp's facial expressions in this scene. He hugs his little brother, showing his concern and love, but when he pulls away to where his family can see, it's the same stern expression he usually has. Picard runs into the Rashenkos upon his return to the Enterprise, and Worf and Helena drag Sergei away from another tour.
I have all the specs and diagrams at home.
We end this heartfelt episode back in France with Robert and Marie looking out over their son as Renee gazes up at the stars, dreaming of a future in Starfleet.
It's getting late.
Yeah. But let him dream.
And that was Family, my personal top episode of TNG, even better than the Best of Both Worlds. It's probably one of the least sci-fi episodes in all of Trek. No alien possession, no warring factions on some far-off planet, no old lady hitting on Riker while she's sent to assassinate her family's rival. It's just a very heartfelt human story. Well, you know what I mean. The episode touches on universal, timeless themes, making it very accessible to even non-sci-fi fans. It's also satisfying to see Picard release his emotions and face his trauma, and we don't lose respect for him seeing him in such a vulnerable state. He's still the strong, stoic captain of the Enterprise to his crew, but he's also human with deep emotions. Sure, this might not be the most action-packed episode, and the bulk of the tension rests not on survival, but whether Picard is going to leave his career in Starfleet. But Family is such a heartfelt, earnest episode, with sweet character moments, emotionally satisfying scenes, and a lot of heart. And it makes a perfect epilogue to the Best of Both Worlds, wrapping up that arc and addressing the consequences of Picard's time with the Borg.
Here is a little of the 47. Do not drink it all at once.
So what do you think of the episode Family? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you agree with me that it's better than its preceding episodes? Or does the Best of Both Worlds still reign supreme? And what are some of your favorite family dramas in Star Trek? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
At home, I have all the specs and diagrams of the Galaxy-class starships.